you see how the people who constantly claim that you have to rely on them to combat disinformation are in fact the people who spread disinformation most aggressively and most casually? You can't get a journalistic disgrace, a scandal more grave or more visible than this. And the reason I always point out that not one media outlet who spread and ratified this lie has retracted it is not because I hope that they will or trying to pressure them to do so. I know that they won't. They never will. It doesn't matter how much evidence emerges. And the reason they never will. Now, I have frequently said that I think one of the gravest journalistic scandals of the past 5 years is the way in which the corporate media, in the weeks before the 2020 election, decided that they did not want to report on or talk about extremely incriminating reporting that was first published by the New York Post and then other media outlets that was not about Hunter Biden's private life. That was never the issue. Instead, it was about the way in which Joe Biden's family, and often Joe Biden himself, was trading on his name and influence to seek and obtain profit and other business deals in places like Ukraine and China, where obviously they knew he would exercise great influence if he ran for president and won. That was what that reporting was about. It was highly incriminating of Joe Biden and his family and the way that they are willing to use power and influence to corruptly profit in foreign places. And because the media was so desperate to protect Joe Biden in the weeks headed to the 2020 election, not do anything to allow any reporting that might have harmed his chances of winning that election, they took a lie from the intelligence agency. These former intelligence operatives like John Brennan and James Clapper, people who reviled Trump, manufactured a complete fabrication. They just decided to issue a letter saying, we think the Hunter Biden laptop has all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign. And the corporate media took that letter, which had no evidence, and even in the letter, even those intel officials admitted they had no evidence for that claim, and they converted it into an absolute truth. And they spent weeks on the air and in print repeating this claim over and over that reporting based on documents from Hunter Biden's laptop could not be confirmed and might even probably should be ignored because it was a Russian disinformation campaign. As you might recall, this was in the weeks before the 2020 election. That was when I wanted to write about the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop and the documents on it and what it revealed about Joe Biden, but I was banned by the Intercept, the media outlet that I had founded and where I was reporting, from even mentioning the contents of the laptop because a week earlier, they too had ratified and spread the CIA lie that these documents were Russian disinformation. Now, since the election happened and Joe Biden was declared the winner, safely put into the White House, almost every one of these same media outlets purported to be able to now authenticate that the Hunter Biden laptop was never Russian disinformation, was never anything than fully authentic and unaltered. In fact, began using documents from his laptop to do a whole wide array of reporting. Obviously, they had concluded that those documents, which were obviously authentic before the election and they were after the election, they were willing to admit it. And I've always regarded this as such a grave journalistic scandal because they lied over and over. They took a CIA lie, exaggerated it even further, and spread it over and over, even though it was a complete lie, to dismiss reporting about Joe Biden that could have harmed his election chances because they were so desperate to ensure that Trump was defeated. Now, it's one thing to have watched all these corporate media outlets admit that the laptop was authentic all along, which they've done. But something happened today in the courtroom where Hunter Biden is being prosecuted by the federal government for a wide range of crimes, including lying on an application for a gun permit where he has to certify that he's not abusing drugs when in fact he was, and other banking and tax claims. In order to prosecute Joe Biden, the FBI needs to use, to prove his guilt, the documents from that laptop. That's a major part of their case. And so obviously they need to put an FBI agent on the witness stand and have her testify under oath that she was able to confirm, and the FBI was able to confirm that the Hunter Biden laptop and the contents of it were in fact authentic. And that's exactly what the FBI agent did today. She took the stand and under oath testified about how it is that the FBI confirmed that the documents on which they're relying for this investigation and for this prosecution are in fact authentic and not Russian disinformation at all. Here from NBC News, which was one of the outlets most aggressively spreading this lie, Hunter Biden trial highlights. FBI agent testifies about Hunter Biden's drug use and large cash withdrawals. The agent, a witness for the prosecution, testified about the authenticity of Hunter Biden's laptop, which has been the subject of rumors and speculation for years. Not just rumors and speculation, but lies. It's been the subject of lies for years. And not by trolls on the internet, but by our leading media outlets and the leaders of our intelligence agencies and Democratic Party operatives. As a reminder, here was a tweet from Jen Psaki, the current MSNBC host and former Biden administration press secretary, who tweeted on October 19, 2020, Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinformation, dozens of former intel officials say. And she cited the first article ever published on this by the serial liar Natasha Bertrand. And you see here that the letter said, we believe it has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, though we can't prove it. And in the hands of Jen Psaki and Natasha Bertrand in Politico, it morphed into the far more definitive claim, which you see right on the screen, in that tweet, the Hunter Biden story is Russian disinformation. Dozens of former intel officials say. Do you see how the people who constantly claim that you have to rely on them to combat disinformation are in fact the people who spread disinformation most aggressively and most casually? Just to give you a small sense of what the media was doing on the airwaves in the weeks and days leading up to the 2020 election to protect Joe Biden, here was CNN, who put James Clapper on their show. And you see there, U.S. officials investigating if recently published emails are tied to Russian disinformation effort targeting Biden. They barely ever talked about the contents of the reporting. They instead tried to lie about it, to call into question and even deny its authenticity by claiming it was Russian disinformation when all along it never was. And I was so convinced before the 2020 election that it was completely authentic based on the same methods I had used to authenticate other archives, exactly the same ones used for the Snowden reporting, for WikiLeaks, for the big Brazil investigation that we did, where we had to authenticate large archives before putting our name and credibility at stake. I could see that this archive was completely authentic, and yet the Intercept was one of the media outlets created to oppose propaganda from the U.S. security state that instead published this lie as well, saying the CIA has warned that this archive is Russian disinformation and then prevented me from reporting on it on that basis until I finally quit. That's how devoted they are and committed they were to this lie, because it was so important to them not to do anything to risk Biden's election, even if it meant doing their jobs as journalists and reporting authentic documents. Not a single one of those outlets has ever accounted for, explained, apologized for, or retracted any of these lies. Listen to the stuff that they were just constantly putting on air. There was a 20-minute montage that was excellent by a Twitter user called Kanoka the Great, and I published it on my Twitter feed as well, but it's 20 minutes long. I'm not going to show you that, but it's just a partial iceberg, tip of the iceberg of how these media outlets just over and over and over and over and over again told people to ignore this reporting because it was Russian disinformation. Here's what James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence under President Obama, and at the time a CNN analyst, went on the air and said with Aaron Burnett. Listen to this.
Obama. So, Director, a bunch of questions from this. Let me just start with this. How much does the source matter, right? So you hear the story of this laptop. We don't know a lot. We do know that the way that this information is getting out is through Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani. How much does the source matter here?
Well, source matters a lot, and the timing matters a lot, I think. And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet Russian.
By the way, you see here James Clapper, CNN national security analyst, and just before that, he's identified as former director of national intelligence. To me, just this graphic alone shows the complete union of the U.S. intelligence security state, the intelligence community, and corporate media. This used to be clandestine. The CIA and intelligence agencies would use secret programs to influence media outlets. They wouldn't do it out in the open. Now it's just right out in the open. They go right from the CIA or the FBI or DHS or the NSA right to the newsrooms of all these corporate media outlets where they are presented as the experts that you should believe, the trained liars of the U.S. security state who are presenting the news. And here's what they had James Clapper saying.
Just classic textbook Soviet Russian tradecraft at work. The Russians have analyzed the target. They understand that the president and his enablers crave dirt on Vice President Biden, whether it's real or contrived, that doesn't matter to them. And so all of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow and emails on it without any metadata. It's all very curious. But so here you have a willing target, and the Russians who are very sophisticated about it.
And here you see on the screen as well, Washington Post, quote, White House was warned that Giuliani was being used by the Russians to, quote, feed misinformation to Trump. So the entire media project was to join with the U.S. intelligence agency when their whole function supposedly is to be adversarial to it, and to join together with them and to ratify this lie, to convince the American people that this reporting was based on fabrications that came from Russia. The same script they had been using against Trump for 4 years, of course. And you had Jen Psaki spreading it, and then when Donald Trump brought it up in the debates to say, look at all these documents that show how your family was corruptly seeking profit in places like Ukraine and China, Biden immediately said, oh, you're just doing the Kremlin's work and spreading Russian disinformation. One time a reporter asked Biden about the substance of these revelations, once, Bo Erickson of CBS, and he was mauled by Democratic Party operatives and by his colleagues in the media for even raising the question, saying that he was doing the Kremlin's dirty work by even mentioning this in Joe Biden's presence. If you live through this, you just remember what it is that they did, and the fact that we don't just suspect that this is a lie, but we have it so proven, even to the point where these corporate media outlets admitted it, and now the FBI is willing, in fact, meeting to go onto the witness stand under oath and say that the reason they're relying on these documents to prosecute Hunter Biden is because they know for certain that it's authentic. You can't get a journalistic disgrace, a scandal more grave or more visible than this. And the reason I always point out that not one media outlet who spread and ratified this lie has retracted it is not because I hope that they will or trying to pressure them to do so. I know that they won't. They never will. It doesn't matter how much evidence emerges. And the reason they never will, and this more than anything is what has corrupted American corporate journalism, the reason why the public doesn't trust any of them anymore. The Washington Post publisher had to tell an angry newsroom after they fired the executive editor that the reason we have to make fundamental changes is because he told the Washington Post reporters, no one reads your work anymore. No one's reading your stuff because the public doesn't trust it. And the reason is that they understand that the reason these media outlets lied right before the election, and I will never retract it, is because they regard as their primary duty not the function of journalism, but doing anything and everything, including lying and spreading fake news and deceit, in the much overarching and more important cause of defeating Donald Trump. They are really explicitly political activists who do not believe that serving the journalistic role and journalistic values is their highest duty. They don't care about that at all, at all. All they care about is fulfilling their political activism of sabotaging the Trump campaign and then Trump presidency, and they believe that anything and everything, including lying, is justified to do it. And that's why they'll never apologize or retract it, because they believe that even though they spread a lie, it was for the much higher cause of ensuring that Joe Biden won the 2020 election.